Namaskar, hello to everybody. Welcome to the second evening of this series of 5 conversations. Just what you have seen, it was a small video clip about Art Vision because this is a celebration of the 25th anniversary of Art Vision. Art Vision was founded 25 years ago by a group of artists which belong to different disciplines like dance, cinema, literature, theater. So continuing on these premises, the 25th celebration is organized by Art Vision in collaboration with the India Habitat Center. And it is dance across genres. So we will be meeting experts in different disciplines. Today is the second day, and we are having dance and theater. So dance and theater seems to be two worlds apart in today's performative scenario. As if their common ground has been lost along the centuries. In reality, they both spring from the same root and have the same purpose of communicating through the physicality of the body. Both the disciplines use the body as their medium of expression, how the body moves, talks, reacts, and translates. So what is it that distinguishes the two forms of acting? And how to find again that common ground which seemed to have been lost? We have with us a veteran actress of the Odin Theatre from Denmark, Julia Varley. Welcome, Julia. We're very happy to have you with us. She joined Odin Theatre in 1976. She is an active actor, director, teacher, and writer. She's closely involved with the ISTA, International School of Theatre Anthropology. And I'm sure she will be talking about this very interesting scientific approach to the study of movements. And she's also involved with the Magdalena Project, which is a network of women in contemporary theatre. She's also the artistic director of the Transit Festival in Hostelbro and editor of the Open Page, a journal devoted to women's work in theatre. So now to you, Julia, please. And at the, when she will finish her talk and exposition, we will open the question-answer session, and you will be able to send your question through the chatting box. If you want to come live on screen, you can raise your hand and your mic will be activated. So, Julia, to you.
Thank you, Ileana. I'm very happy to be with you from a very long distance and to be where I can see there's Hisako in Japan and there's Jaime from Mexico. So as usual, these Zoom meetings are bringing together people from all over the world. I'm grateful also to take part in this initiative with Ileana, with whom I have collaborated in the past. I remember in particular in 2004, we were both present at the ISTA, the International School of Theatre Anthropology session in Seville in Spain. So we have many, many things in common and a way of thinking, which I think is also something that we share. During the ISTA, the sessions of ISTA, we never divide between actors in the sense of actors who perform for the theatre and dancers. We tend to use the word actor-dancer, and also very often we speak about dance, theatre, theatre-dance, as if it was a one experience and not something which is divided, because for us it is one experience. I gave the title to my talk, Thinking with the Feet. This is something which, an image which I use often when I have to talk, when I have to write, to try and get people to understand that my way of thinking is not tied to concepts, but it is very much tied to an experience of the body. It is as if also the words which I find when I'm talking or that I write in articles and books come from my experience as an actor on stage and have very much to do with all the principles that we use to be present on stage. Being present on stage is different than being present in daily life, because on stage we are not just there, but we also have to be seen and heard by spectators. So our way of using the energy is completely different, because we have to engage our body more and we have to give energy to the spectator. It is not something that stays with us, it has to be shared. And so thinking with the feet is an intelligence which I find grounded on the earth, when I can feel the weight in my, on the ground where I am leaning. And from there, the energy goes out into space. Thinking with the feet means especially not thinking in meanings or thinking in narrative, but with something that we call an organic dramaturgy, which is to say a dramaturgy which has to do with the impulses of the body. One could also use the example of animals. If an animal comes close to another animal, they will react to the impulses of the body of the animal. Well, the human being has tended to become a bit too intelligent, too conceptual. And there I think that theatre, a lot in the last years, has lost this physicality, this language which is tied to the muscles, to the nervous system, to the blood of our bodies, and has become much more involved with the ideas. For me, it is the impulses which are important. And there, in 1996, we had a session of ISTA, the International School of Theatre Anthropology, in Copenhagen, where many dancers, actors, performers from different kinds of genres and traditions were talking about the difference, if there is, between dance and theatre. So there were performers coming from classical dance, there were traditional actors who mostly work with text. There were modern dancers, actors of Odin-Theater, and then many of the Asian traditions, classical traditions, where this division between theatre and dance does not exist. And so there was from theatre dance from Varley, from Japan, from India. And a lot of the talks and demonstrations came back to the idea of energy. So what is energy, and how can one define energy, and how can one work with energy? And during this, Ileana, if you can turn off your sound.
You want the first clip number 1?
No, if you can turn off your sound because there's a noise coming from you.
Okay.
Yes, that's better. Talking about the difference between theatre and dance during the session at Easter in 1996, also the Odin actors made a demonstration, and I made a demonstration, and I started by saying that I noticed a difference more in the terminology, so not so much in the actual way of working, but in the terminology. Because as an actor, I will always be talking about actions, while I find that many dancers speak about movement. And also Ileana, in her introduction, when she talked about the Easter, she was saying this scientific approach to movement. Well, for me, it would be action. And I became aware of the difference between movement and action for me when I tried to explain a procedure which at Odin-Theater we call of reduction, which means that an action can be reduced in space, so it's not occupying the space done in the first bit. You can reduce it so that it is not occupying the same space, but it maintains the impulses and the intentions. So I make the example in the demonstration, like if I lift my hands, in that movement you cannot reduce it. But if I think that I am pushing with my hands against the sky, I can also make the movement smaller, but maintain the action of pushing. So it is as if the outer form can change, maintaining the impulse and the original intention and maintaining the action. So it is not a question of meanings, and it is not a question of stories, a narrative, but it is how you modulate the physical presence that you have as an actor or dancer on stage. In this organic dramaturgy, which we have learned at Odin-Theater through the training, it's with the training that our body gets to know all the principles which are behind the presence, and or behind or underneath. The principles do not have to do with the form. And that is something also that we study at Easter. So how can we find the common principles, like going out of balance, the way one walks, how you change your balance, finding different ways of walking, which you can see in No theater with the slipping of the feet and the lifting slightly of the toes, or you can see in the Balinese dance with the impulses in and out, or also if you think of the Kathakali with the leaning on the floor with the outer part of the foot. And so also at Odinteatet, we have found very many different ways of walking, of moving our balance out of the center. And this is like a principle to awaken the presence on stage and so have a bigger effect on the perception of the spectator. In the training, we learn to modulate our presence, for instance, with soft and strong energy. So if we make a movement with a soft energy, or we make it with a strong energy, this modulation again exists in many of the dance theater traditions all over the world. Or we can work with the different rhythms. So you can do an action very fast or very slow. And this alternation of rhythm is also a way of keeping awake the perception of the spectator. When you go up into the space, then you can follow the next action by going down. Or if you do an action where you are opening and you're extrovert, and then you can do the next action closed as if you're introverted. Also, some of the principles which we have found have to do with equivalence. So, and this is a general principle used by all art, because we have to find an equivalent of what exists in reality in the daily life, and through a kind of artificiality, find a different way in which we can present reality. So with the equivalent, I can make an action with my whole body, or the same action I could do with a prop, with a chair, with a handbag, or I could do it through the voice, and so find the equivalent of the action which I've done physically with the voice. And I could also transpose to just one part of the body, which could be a hand, a foot, the face. So if I am doing a big hug with my arms, I could do the hug with my mouth, or with my eyes, or just with my hand. So all these principles are a way of dealing with the presence of the body on stage, so that, again, we're not thinking of the narrative, but more of this organic dramaturgy, where the changes of the muscular tonus in your torso are essential to give a different perception to the spectator and to keep their attention. In the demonstration which I spoke about, I make various examples of how I say that I always dance when I am on stage. And so I can ask Ileana to put the first clip of video, which comes from this demonstration, in which I show a way of using music. Ileana, we can't hear the sound. So you probably have to unmute yourself. you.
It's okay?
I always dance when I am on stage. If I define for myself dance as actions or energy molded following a music, and I will make some examples. There is a scene in the performance The Castle of Holstebro where I am smiling, but in reality I am dancing. Now is the month of May, and all the city boys and girls are
Ileana, if you mute yourself again so we get rid of the noise.
Yeah, but something happened.
In this tip of the demonstration, I am talking about the fact that the music makes me smile, that it is the high tones of the violin that pull up the corners of my mouth and make me smile. So the way of following the music for me has to do with like a physical impulse which I feel in the music. It is a dialogue which is very similar to the dialogue that you can establish with another actor on stage or with the space or with an object. it is something very concrete. And although music is not something that we can touch and put into a box and explain, but I feel it has impulses. It's like it pushes me, it makes me open or close, it makes me do a step or go backwards, it makes me go down, up, and it has a very concrete effect on my body. And that is something which allows me also to have a particular quality in the movements or the actions which I do on stage if I am accompanied by music. So it is not just because of an inner motivation, but it is very much reacting to something which exists outside of myself. Now, this could be music, but it can also be sounds, it could be text, it could be sounds which come from other actors, or sounds, for instance, during the training, I could react to the wind, or to a helicopter, or to a door closing. All the sounds of the floor under my feet are something which I find very inspiring for my work. And so it is always a relationship with something which is outside of me. And of course, the music is very strong in this. So the quality in the way I walk, or the quality that I have in tearing a piece of paper, also can come from the music. And here we could have the next clip, Ileana.
I can tear a piece of paper and dance, or walk and dance, because it is the music that carries the quality and the rhythm of what I am. Never give up, never begin. When you're on your way, never say, I can't. And I stop here. I stop here. I don't know what more to tell you. You must understand. I am fine on my way.
Ileana, if you can mute. Thank you. This way of working for me also is the same with the text. I know that other actors tend to work with text more, thinking of the meaning of the words and what one is trying to deliver through the text. But for me, a lot of the work with text has to do with the vocal action, and that can also be very much inspired by music. Very often I will work with the text following a music, which means which I can adapt the way of saying the text to a music. I could start by singing the text and then slowly taking the song away so that only the memory of the music is left in the way of saying the text. But it decides all the inflections, the pauses, the particular way of underlining a word or another word. It comes from the music. And this can also be done through an improvisation. If I take a text, I can improvise with the voice so that the musicality is determined by an improvisation, not because I'm thinking of the meaning, but I can give myself a theme, which could be the water from the stream arriving into the sea. And so all the passages of the water through the rocks in the mountains, in the plain, and then out into the sea can produce different sounds, which I can then adapt to the text. So the text acquires a musicality. I think that this way of working with the text for me comes from the fact that I am English, but I grew up in Italy, and then I moved to Denmark. So I'm used to changing languages very often. And I have found that I am not tied to one kind of musicality of the language, but more to a musicality that is distant from the language. I also enjoy very much when I am listening to Spanish people speaking. One can hear that the musicality in Argentina or in Peru or in the Caribbean or in Mexico or in Spain is completely different. So there is not one way in which one should speak the language. There are very many different ones. So music is essential. And in this demonstration, I make the example with a poem by Cesare Pavese. And I first find the actions based on a music, and then I find the way of saying the text also using music, and then I make a montage. In the moment of making the montage, it's like the impulses which come from the vocal score and the impulses that come from the physical score have to find a common dance, which means synchronizing the impulses. Very often when at theater we do not believe the actors, it is often because they do not manage to synchronize the physical impulse with the vocal impulse. This happens naturally when we are in daily life, but in theater, we have to find it through a montage which needs a lot of repetition. It is the rehearsals that find this synchronization between the physical score and the vocal score. The text of Cesare Pavese's poem says, "You are earth and death. Nothing exists more distant from silence than you." But then we will hear it in the clip of the demonstration. Ileana, if you can put the next clip. Thank you.
I can also use music to find physical material and then
Sweetness in dreams, bubbling movements that you hold. Mystery like the water of the lake, trembles and surrounds her. Like circles on water, you allow them to wane. You are earth and death. I make other examples of how music can help me, for instance, find a character, like Doña Musica, which is a character which I worked on for the performance Chaosmos, started from a Japanese music which I was given by Kano Azuma. She gave me this music, and presents are always something useful for our work. And following this music, I found many of the ways of moving of this character. So dancing can also be a way of finding a character. In this way of working for a performance, it is as if the position in which I am is a position of listening or trying to understand what the work is telling me. So it's not that I decide, oh, I'm going to say this, or I'm going to bring this meaning or this story, but it is more that I have a point of departure, which could be an object, it can be a music, it could be a poem, it could be a painting. And from this point of departure, then I start working. And during the work, I try to understand what the work is telling me. So it is very much a position of listening and perceiving. And it is like I am questioning myself all the time during the work. And there, the feeling I have is that the energy which is in the ground under my feet comes out, goes through me and out into space. And again, this is the thinking with the feet. So it is a thinking where how my feet are on the ground and how they perceive the ground underneath me, and allow the energy from the ground, from the earth, to go through me and out into space. So also with the voice, it is the power that comes through my feet, through my body and out into space, which allows me to exist in the space. And there, it is as if I am a medium through, and through me, something else speaks. So the thinking of the feet is a way in which it is as if I, as a person, disappear for something else to come forwards. And this is also in the way we work on performances. It is allowing the energy to flow out of us and arrive to the spectators. Now, it is nearly 6:15. I don't know, Ileana, how long time do you want to leave for questions?
Okay. You want me to put the last one, Donna Musica?
Yes, you can put it.
I have not prepared that, but okay, let us go with the spectator first, because that is ready.
The dance with the spectators. It is as if I dance with the attention of the spectators, bringing it towards me, or away from me. My first visit to you, I went in as if I wanted to see what's next.
found myself in the middle of a religious ceremony. I crept forward from the first floor of it, and there, for the first time, I saw an Indian woman dressed in bright colors. She was an Ani, praying. Beside her was a child, 4 or 5 years old, all children, motionless in the way that only Indian children know. In front of them, stretched out on the floor, there was a little dog, dead.
I would repeat this scene, trying to make clear the directions and indications that I followed in this couple dance with the spectator. The first day of my first visit to Varley, I went to Ileana's cathedral. I wanted to see Citaristi. I found myself in the middle of a religious ceremony. I crept forwards and tiptoed up to the first room, and there for the first time I saw a beautiful woman, dressed in bright colors. She was on her knees, praying. This time it was a child.
You want to go for the Donna Musica?
Yes.
I have to prepare it.
In the clip that you just saw, while we wait for Ileana to find Dona Musica, I am talking about the dance with the spectators. So the fact of bringing the attention of the spectators towards me or far away from me. So allowing the spectator to see something beyond what is just what I am doing, but that they begin to see what is not there.
It's also allowed to create the character of Donna Musica.
Ileana, I think now we can take the questions.
Sure. If I put on mic, I think I disturb. But yeah, I was just thinking, just before going to the question, I'm sure that in the few years which I did of theater before coming to dance, Indian dance, and yeah, the third theater. Let's talk. That we were starting from improvisation and spontaneity, the maximum exuberance of spontaneity, and then slowly taking out all and taking the redundant and going to the whatever could be saved out of it, and that would have been the probably the something to be worked on, and then finally to become a performance. So, and in dance, Indian dance is just the, you know, in a way the opposite, in a sense that we start from very rigorous convention and very structured grammar of the body, and we have to, by repetition of the same gesture and the same things with years and years, we have to reach a spontaneity through the absorption and embodiment of this kind of very rigorous and rigid structure. So I was always thinking that it's a sort of an opposite process which the two things. I don't know if it was clear what I wanted to say.
Yes, well, I think that for us, the difference is that the codification that you get in the Indian classical dance is something that you can get from tradition, that you learn, and then through the many years of repetition, you get a kind of freedom also for the improvisation. The codification that we have at Odin Teatret is something that we have to invent ourselves. So often this would be with an improvisation at the beginning. It could be with also ways of moving the body and then planning it, but it can also be through improvisation. But that does not mean that it's like we start from something which is so spontaneous. Also the improvisation, the way in which we move our body or do actions comes from the training. So it is not directly linked. It's not as if we are repeating exercises, but our body has learned to move in a particular way from the training, which is then that body which we use in the improvisation. Then the improvisation is done and it has to be fixed and repeated. And it is only after that the body has learned it completely, and so we are able to repeat it without thinking, that we begin to feel that same kind of freedom, which I feel you probably have when you have worked many years on a score which comes from the tradition. We invent our score, but then we have to go through the same process of repeating until it's like part of our way of behaving, and gives us the freedom to react to what is happening in the moment when we are performing it, to also to mistakes or things which happen, or the spectators, or the different space in which we are in. So the rigor and the discipline exists also in our way of making theatre. It has a different starting point, but I would say that the process is quite similar. And okay, you can get the scores, you can get from the different dances, the different choreographies. You also invent new choreographies, and then you have to repeat them, until they are part of your body. And we do the same. We improvise and so invent ways of behaving, which then can be cut and changed and put into relation with the text, with the music, with other actors. And then slowly out of this montage, a performance appears. So it can be, when we are working on a performance, we could have 50 hours of material, which is cut and reduced and boiled down to 1 hour in the end. So it's a lot of rigor, a lot of discipline, a lot of repetition. But I think that is what allows us to think with our body and not with our heads.
Yeah, we have a question from Arsha. She says, the magic comes from the live musicians. Regrettably, today, dance is not always able to give live music. My question is about the need for the fixity of music to keep all participants, musicians, movement artists, and actors on the same page. If so, then is the thinking through the feet is somewhat prefixed?
It is obvious that with live music, apart from having the musicians with their live presence, but you also have a completely different vibration in the music. But this is also eaten up in live music when you use a lot of microphones. For instance, with the voice, the vibration of the voice, which you hear naturally, is completely different from the vibration of the voice through a microphone. So there are very many different steps in the feeling of life, which is expressed in a theater, in a performance. Of course, if you have live music with live musicians using their own instruments without microphones, and you have actors or singers or dancers talking and singing without microphones, you will feel vibrations that you will not feel with the technical assistance. The volume is less, so maybe you cannot have so many spectators. You have to have the spectators much closer to you. This is, for me, the best possibilities for theater and dance when this exists. But of course, there are problems which have to do with the economy mostly, because to have live musicians is also expensive. It makes that the performance, if there is one dancer or two dancers, if you have a whole orchestra with you, it becomes much more expensive to tour. And the possibilities for this in our modern times are not so many. But that does not mean that we have to give up doing live performances. I have various solos which I do with recorded music. And the solos allow me to go in places where it would not be possible to go with live musicians and a whole orchestra. So one has to have compromises, less living performance, but still the performance which can tour. Then there are choices like we have seen during the pandemic, where you start putting theater and dance online, and so through computers. And there I feel that the real power of theater and dance, which has to do with the living presence of the performer at the same time as the living presence of the spectator, together in the same space and in the same time. That power does not exist when we are using film or we are using internet connections. What happens? Very often theater loses its power and we are doing bad films because we are not using the technique of cinema. We are not using the quickness and the montage which film needs of jumping from one sequence to the other. And so there can be a tendency to be more boring. On the other hand, we have seen in this year and a half that it also allows connection to the other side of the world with theater, with dance, with performances, which were not possible in other moments. So it maintains a connection. There you have to decide what is the most important for your performance: to have a living spectator, to have a living performer, to having live music, or simply to tell a different story to the rest of the world. Also that is necessary. And we have to make choices. But the thinking of the feet is what allows me to make the choice.
Yeah, I think what she wanted to ask, probably if I understand properly, is if the music is fixed, how much liberty the actor has for improvising? Is all prefixed for the actor also?
The improvisation on fixed music is very much in the details. Because again, you need to synchronize the impulses in the same way as action is synchronized with text. Action is also synchronized with the music. Of course, you can go against the music, you can make a dialogue with the music, you can decide to come a little bit before, a little bit after, but these are very small details in the improvisation. You can also decide that it is like a parallel existing sequence, that the music goes on one side and the action goes on the other side without a dialogue, without a meeting. But for me, what is interesting is the meeting of the two, of the music and the actions. So yes, it is possible. There is a small amount of improvisation always, which has to do with how you are present in that moment, and you are not anticipating what comes after, and you're not leaning on what happened before. You have to be present in that moment. So that obliges you to react in the moment. And even if you know it very well by heart, still there will be very, very small changes all the time.
And what is your relation with the director when you compose something? It's totally yours, or you go still to the director for polishing or for advice, or I mean, after all, I think Eugenio Barba is somebody who has the overall direction of the team and whatever is done in Odin. So when individual composition and compositions are there, what is the relation of the individual actor with him?
It changes very much from performance to performance. Very often my solos have started as something quite personal, that I have come with the material and I have come with the performance nearly developed until the end, in the sense of having a form which exists, which I have worked on a lot. And then Eugenio will work on it. I like to have Eugenio present to see the performances as much as possible, because that gives me the freedom of not checking myself. It's like if I have the external eye, I do not have to think if I am doing well or not, if I am doing in the correct way or not. I just do, and then I know that there is somebody from the outside that knows the performance, knows what how it should be, and can tell me if there are some tendencies developing in a direction which is wrong. So for me, the presence of the director is actually a feeling of freedom. It's quite the opposite of what many people think that it is a restriction. It is different with the group performances because there, where there are many actors involved, the fact of having Eugenia present is being able to see the totality, where as the single actor, we tend to be more concentrating on what we are doing in that moment, and so not aware maybe of the complete totality of what is going on everywhere else. Also, Eugenio is important because he can take care of the spectators. And when the performance is finished or just before it's starting, as an actor, I am not available. It's like when just before it's starting, I am preparing, and at the end, I like to be by myself. I don't like to meet the spectators immediately. And having Eugenio present allows for a contact with the spectators. Often there are spectators who are moved and who feel that they need to be in contact with us who have made the performance. And having Eugenio present allows that to happen in a much more easy, organic way than having to wait for me to come out and talk with the spectators. Then it depends if the performance is very young, so a performance that we have not done much, or if it's a performance that we have done for many years, and so is incorporated to such a point that his comments are not so necessary. In the beginning, in the performance which is young, Eugenio's comments are much more necessary, and I need them to be there. You need
Thank you so much, Julia. I think, okay. I think we are over with the question also. Citaristi, modulating the presence is such an interesting idea, and more thank you for elaborating on it. Okay. So we close with this, and thanks a lot, and it's very lovely to meet you at the distance, and give my love to Eugenio, please, and I miss all of you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
I hope we meet rarely.
Yeah.
Soon.
Last time you missed your trip to India because of your visa, I remember.
Yes.
We were supposed to meet in Calcutta. Okay, so thank you again, and thank you everybody.
Grazie Ileana e grazie Giulia, da Roma.
Oh, good. Some Italian touch. Okay, so thank you to everybody, and good night or good afternoon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.